So thank you so much for being here, Kim. I'm so excited.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you're up to?
Well, my name is Kim, and I am a holistic lifestyle coach, and I work with women, helping them to find their flow in life and connect to themselves in a different way, in a way we've not been taught to connect to ourselves, using our menstrual cycle. And it's been a powerful journey for me, gaining experience and knowledge using my menstrual cycle as a superpower to live my best life. And now I share it with women, and it's exciting, it's adventurous, and I just absolutely love it. I'm also a single mom, so I live on a small piece of property with my son, and we homeschool, grow our own food, and just a nature-loving family.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I saw your post this morning, I'm pretty sure, about it was like very peaceful, but it was about to get really busy.
Oh, yes. I just started working I work with young children as well as a mentor. And I just started working at the Workworth Nature Academy as a facilitator and mentor on Thursdays. Cool. So I spend the day in the woods with 13 wild kiddos. And it's peaceful when I first get there because I'm on my own, but shortly after it gets a little bit loud.
Absolutely, it does. That's so cool. I just started looking into forest schools for our daughter. She's 2, but we are looking to kind of relocate. And I just wanted to make, see what was available and where we could go and what that future would look like for her. So I just had this gut feeling. I was like, I wish there were more options. Like there's not a lot of options where I am.
No, I've actually run a small nature school here on my property for the last 8 years as well. So I have kids here during the day, sometimes, not every day. At one point it was every day. Right. And now I'm down to 1 or 2 days a week. Just exploring the woods and crafting and building fires, and yeah, it's great fun.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. So I would love to hear from you. What does redefining motherhood mean to you, and how has that evolved in your journey and in your journey of motherhood and your journey of business?
I think redefining motherhood is just about defining it in your own way.
Yeah.
We are all unique individuals. We're all unique women, and we're all going to mother in our own unique way. And when we can step into who we are and truly live from our authentic being, I think we redefine motherhood for ourselves. And we do motherhood in our own way without worrying about what everybody else thinks.
Yeah. But how do we do that?
How do we do that? You just have to step into it. I think it's challenging. It's not easy. I did not mother the way the norm of society would have expected me to. I didn't mother in the way my mother probably expected me to. And I had to be okay with not having everybody's opinions or
like validation.
Thoughts. Yeah, I had to be okay with receiving that validation and just trust that I was mothering from my gut and my intuition and what was right for my child. And yeah, that's not easy. And, I came to motherhood later in life. I didn't become a mother till I was 36. And so, I had a bit more maybe courage to mother in a different way. But, because I had a mother late in life, I also have a lot of friends that are younger than myself because our kids are now all the same age. And they're mothering in a different way too. So they had that courage when they were younger mothers as well. So I think we all have it. We just need to pull it out and use it.
And so I love that, because I think redefining motherhood is really the truth of that is just doing it our way, getting back into our bodies and reconnecting with who we are. And I think for a lot of moms, especially on the show, it has been this becoming journey of kind of finding our way back to our truest self. And so how do we show up and do that without the validation or without the framework, which I think has also been super powerful, that we're not really meant to do it alone. And I think it's about really finding that like-minded mom who receives or has those same values, in just really tuning into our gut. And I think making the space for that is important, right? Like
Yeah.
having conversations about like what's okay for me, and being okay with the fact that you will probably have something different to say, and that's okay. And it doesn't take away or make my light any dimmer or brighter. It's just what it is. And I think that mind frame has been a saving grace for myself.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. I think it's realizing that we're all going to make different choices and different decisions on our journeys, whether that's in our life or whether that's in mothering.
Mm-hmm.
And because I make one choice doesn't mean that your choice is any less valid.
Mm-hmm.
We just make our own choices, and we make our own choices because we're connected to who we are and we know what we want. And from that place, we can make decisions that are authentic and true for who we are. And it doesn't lessen somebody else's decision. It doesn't make anybody else's decision wrong or right. It's just what's right for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how have you, so now you're focusing on the superpower that is our menstrual cycle. And so when you and I were talking before and setting up this really awesome opportunity, yeah, I shared my journey with really discovering a menstrual cycle and really deconditioning from what I had grown up with, and really unpacking what it means to have a menstrual cycle and what, how that works. And I shared with you how I've been incorporating that into the planning and the leaning in and out of the business, and how that has been so powerful, as well as parenting, like with the moons. And it's like, just, choosing when to lean in and when to step out, and how it relates to my relationship. And I would say, before really diving into this and then having our conversation, I was kind of like, wait a minute, am I being a bit too much? Like, am I making this a bit too much about the menstrual cycle and about the hormones? And so then I'm like, no, wait, that's a condition. So let go of that, and it's okay to have these conversations with my partner. Like, hey, right now there is a lot of fierce rage energy, and it's got nothing to do with you, but I'm probably going to play it out with you. I am absolutely going to play it out with you. And so how do we create that space within our relationship where, there's a boundary of him being respected and myself being respected, but also making room for the superpower that is. So I would love to hear your thoughts and your journey on that.
Yes. And, I just as an aside, as you mentioned your partner and sharing with him where you are and what you're feeling, women that I've worked with have found it really, really powerful in their relationships when they chart their cycle and they actually make that chart available to their partner.
Cool.
Because then their partner sees where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And their partner then knows if they're in their summer phase, then you know what? I should probably come home with flowers tonight and maybe arrange a babysitter, because she's going to be sensual and sexy and have energy. And if they know you're in your winter phase, maybe they arrange to take the kids out for dinner so you can have a quiet night and a bath on day 2 of your cycle when you really need it. And when our partners know that, and we can share that with them, it does wonderful things for your relationship.
It just feels very empowering, and just, again, so in tune and connected with like the absolute essence of who we are as humans, right? And beings.
Exactly. And we have this menstrual cycle. Our hormones shift. We are not the same. Every single day we are different based on our hormone levels. And we've been ignoring that. Our world ignores that and just expects women to constantly do, and then do some more. And, we're supposed to do all the things all of the time. And the truth of the matter is, our bodies are not set up for that. And when we can tune into that, when we can make space in our lives to, accept the feminine part of ourselves and be in that being energy, the world changes and your life changes.
It does.
And that happens in motherhood. It happens in business. It happens in relationships. Everything just flows and things feel so much better.
Oh, I just love all of that. I just love all that, because I remember actually, I'm going to look back. I just did an interview with someone. I don't think that it's up on the podcast just yet, but they were saying, oh yeah. So yeah, she is. So I was having a conversation with Benita, and she said that she had just read an article that and don't quote me on this, I probably should look this up, and maybe I will before we leave here, that there's somewhere in the world that is establishing a period leave. So that they will get a day, they have a certain amount that they can use. So I guess it's not one every month, but either way, it's a step forward where you can take that and just have it. And there's like really breaking down the stigma of what it means to have a period. And I found that so fascinating, because I remember when I first went into my whole, I was in corporate, I was in social services, but all women, and going, how are we supposed to show up for work when we feel like this? When all I want to do is curl up on the couch and let my body release whatever it needs to do. And then, you kind of, are you okay if I swear? I always ask.
That I'm okay with swearing.
Okay.
Are you okay if I swear?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a mind fuck. I was like, sorry. So wait a minute. Because it was 2012 when I started there, and about 2013, I stopped taking birth control. I was working with a naturopath, and I stopped taking birth control. So I was really starting that deep dive into what is my body saying and what is it needing, and really, I guess, detoxing from the birth control pill that I'd been on since I was 15. So it was a lot of discovering. And I thought, how am I supposed to show up to work when I'm supposed to lean back? How am I supposed to show up and do all of this stuff? And so it was a mind fuck. And then I was like, am I making too much of a big deal about this? Like, am I being like a little dramatic, which is a word I've always been described as growing up. And then I would just kind of quiet that and just find the happy medium. And, here I am as a mom, and I'm going, and then I'm incorporating it into my business and the flow. And I'm like, this is the magic. This is magic right now. More people need to know about the magic.
Well, and can you imagine a world where our menstrual cycle and how we feel in each phase of our cycle is actually incorporated into the work world?
I do.
Where, if your manager knows your cycle and knows that you are in your spring and summer phase, which is our most outgoing, it's our masculine phase, it's our doing phase, we're sociable, we have better communication skills, we're more interested in being in front of people and doing presentations and workshops. If our manager or our boss knew that and could schedule us to do interviews or workshops or presentations during that phase, how much more they would get from us, and how much more welcoming we would be to be doing that work, as opposed to having a presentation on day 2 of your period, when that's the last place you want to be. And recognizing that, and putting, again, working teams, putting a group of women together that are in the same cycles.
Yes.
The 2 weeks where they're in their spring and summer phase, the creativeness would just be flowing.
Yep. You're
then
so
during
right.
their autumn and winter phase, they're in that more reflective. They look back, they dig deep, they tune into their intuition. Are we on the right track? Like it would really shift the workforce and the way women work, and I think be really powerful. And the idea of giving women, a period leave, a day where they can nourish and nurture themselves during while they're menstruating, it's a fabulous idea.
It's fabulous. It's totally.
Time.
It is about time. Yeah. It just brings me back to those, the days of just like the phase of all of it just being, this is what your body is designed to do. And we disconnected from that because, and I think there's that evolving of like, well, I don't have to be in the home doing all of the motherly things, that I can do both. And then kind of showing up in a man's kind of world and how they operate. I haven't done a lot of diving into like how it works for men, and maybe that's kind of where my next kind of creation goes, but we can't do it like that. And then I think I'm seeing so many challenges with people now around, well, I can't, this week I just can't. And then the mind games that go on, it's like, well, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing a good enough job. There's something wrong. I need to, and we're taking it. So I shouldn't say I'm taking it so personally. And then you kind of lock into the flow and you're like, oh, okay, wait a minute. I've been in a mastermind for 9 months now. And the 4 of us, I think we're almost synced, but there's this energy. And I would say that it, like you had said, the autumn and winter phase, without that connection to that, everything feels very overwhelming. And it feels like we're off track. But the more that we've leaned into, okay, like where's everybody at and how are we, flowing, but lack of a better word, like then it's just permission. And that has so much space in it. And it has really been, I'm trying to find the right words because it just feels so safe and it feels so secure. And I just want that for so many more women.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the key. The key with tracking your cycle and understanding what phase you are in and understanding the characteristics of each phase doesn't change. It doesn't mean that you're not going to experience those feelings anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You're still going to have some insecurity and some self-doubt during your autumn phase. That's what the autumn phase is about.
Mm-hmm.
The key is once you understand that that is your autumn phase and that that is normal, then you know how to move through it.
Yes.
You know how to offer yourself extra grace and extra compassion.
Yes.
You know how to turn the mindset around. So a perfect example is me. I launched my new program, The Foundations to Living in Your Flow, on Tuesday.
Cool.
And
Congrats.
Thank you. I had the first masterclass Tuesday evening, and it was day 1 of my cycle. Didn't plan that one very well. But all day long, I'm saying in my mind is saying to myself, who do you think you are? What do you mean you're sharing this information with other women? You're no one special. That was the self-talk going on in my head. But I was well aware it was day 1 of my period. I was well aware that towards the end of my cycle and the first day of my cycle, I tend to be really insecure and tender and talk to myself in those negative ways. So I stopped. I went for a walk and I reminded myself that this isn't truly how I feel, that this is just the hormones and just what happens at this point in my cycle. Yeah. And then by the time I got around to Tuesday evening to do the masterclass, I was totally fine.
Yes. Yes.
Right? So it's not that, we're going to stop those things from happening.
It's just we can navigate them
we navigate them better, and we learn what tools work for us to help us get through them. We learn what rituals we can put into place to support us in the different phases so that we move through them with greater ease and simplicity.
Oh my God, I love that. I do. I think that as a coach myself, it's all about bringing in that awareness and creating the skills and the framework to navigate through the difficult times. And I say to clients all the time, it's not that this work that you're never going to feel another negative emotion again. It comes down to acknowledging it, making space for it, and just being able to move through it. And some are going to knock us down a lot, like more than others. But I find having linked into to my cycle, I have been making a lot more space for it and not letting it completely stop. Like, I guess I look back and I go, I would start things and then I would get into my, autumn phase and I would stop everything. And then I would be in that a lot longer than probably I needed to be because I was hanging on to so much of what happened or what came up in the autumn phase versus now going, this is where I am. This is normal. Just lean in, like doing the exact opposite of what your body is saying. Like the self-doubt is like, you're not doing enough. So do more. So it's like, if that's the response I get, I actually go, oh, I need to lean back. I need to slow down. Right.
Yeah.
And that has been, it is a lot of permission. And I just think as women, it's like this, being able to tune into what the body is saying has been, it is our superpower. It's 100%. So,
yeah, and we're so disconnected from it.
So for you, can you share with us on your journey how this, has even come up for you? Why did you choose this specific space to bring your brilliance in and guide?
Well, it started for me when I came off the birth control pill. And I was on it for a long time, like about 14 years. And I came off it. I was actually in nutrition school and learned for the first time how not so great it was for me. Right. And was shocked. Now, I think I was one of the lucky ones on birth control because I never had any side effects. I never had any issues whatsoever. Now, I've always been, I grew up as a dancer, and then I was a triathlete. I was sports nutrition all along, a personal trainer. So I've always lived a very healthy lifestyle. So maybe that had some effect on me not suffering any of the side effects of the birth control pill. So I came off it in nutrition school, and of course had, wonderful teachers who guided me and shared with me ways that I could support my body coming off the pill, and support it with, food and supplements to make sure that everything I needed was in my body, all the nutrients and things like that were lacking. And then needed another form of birth control pill. So I read Taking Charge of Your Fertility, and began tracking my cycle that way, with body temperature and cervical fluid and cervix location and things like that. I used that initially to prevent pregnancy, and then used it to finally get pregnant.
Right.
And the using it to get pregnant worked really well, because it worked in the first month.
Wow.
So that was where the journey started. And then it just kept going. I didn't get my period back for almost 2 years. I was breastfeeding. I breastfed my little guy till he was 5.5. My period didn't come back until he was 2. And then when it came back, it came back pretty normal. And then I had some irregularities, some shorter cycles. I started having, some PMS and things like that. And so then I dove a little deeper into, what was wrong, and ways to, help my body deal with these things, because I knew they weren't normal.
Right.
And then sort of dived into the whole idea of these phases of our cycle, and the different phases, what they mean, how they can support me, and how I can nourish myself a little more in each phase, and then use them to live the life that I truly want to live, which is connected to nature and connected to myself. So
and that's what you're doing.
That's
literally what you're doing.
Yeah, it's been about a 15-year journey with understanding my cyclic nature in that way. And it's, every day I feel like I know myself a little bit better, and I can use what I've learned and the superpower of my menstrual cycle to just live well, and live happy, and live vibrant and joyful.
I love that. I really do. I think that just connecting back to ourselves, I feel like, is probably the answer for almost every problem.
It, truly is. We're just conditioned and programmed not to connect to who we are, that we should listen to everybody else about what's best for us, and ignore our own inner knowing. And when we can tune back into that, things change in good ways.
In good ways, yeah. And so you had also shared that you're bringing this work to young women as well. And how has that been going? Like, can you share that with us? Because I'm sure there's some women on here who have daughters. And so I think that's a really cool opportunity to expand on, to hear more about.
It is. So actually, my desire to do this work actually started with young girls. I was doing it with young girls before I was doing it with women.
Cool.
And that was because I got to my early 40s, and I was, diving into all of this. And I was like, why is it taking me this long to figure this out? And how different would my life have been if I had learned this when I was 11 or 12?
Yeah.
And understood how my body was going to fluctuate every day, how it was going to fluctuate throughout the month, how I could use the energy of each phase to move through life. And so I trained to become a mentor for young girls with the Journey of Young Women. And I've been running girl circles for the last 3 or 4 years here on my property. And I gather with them, and we talk all things from emotional intelligence, social intelligence, consent and boundaries. And one area of topic that we discuss is puberty and menstruation and the changing body and what's happening. And I teach them all about the seasons, what the seasons mean, how they're going to feel in each season. I teach them how to track even before their cycle starts. So
Right.
there are some girls that are not menstruating yet, but they're already charting.
Cool.
They're using the moon as their guide, and they're charting how they feel and
Cool.
what feelings come up. And they notice patterns. They notice
Yeah.
when they have, you know, a few days every month where they're really, really not feeling so great and just in a bad mood, and other times when they're really happy. And then once they start menstruating, they use their menstrual cycle to chart.
Mhm.
And I think it's amazing for them to have that knowledge. And I mean, you know, they're young girls. They'll bring their charts in and they've missed a few days or they've missed a month of charting or whatever. That happens.
Yeah.
The thing for me is that they have the information.
Yeah. They have choice. They have a choice now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they can choose to use it. They can choose not to. They can choose to come back to it at a later date.
Yeah.
And I think the most powerful thing for me is I have a group of young girls who are so freaking excited to start menstruating.
Yes.
Right? They know what's happening in their body. Hormonally, they know what's happening because I've explained the cascade of hormones that will happen every month to give them a bleed. They ask such interesting questions about what it's going to feel like to have a period.
Wow.
And I answer them honestly and openly.
Wow.
And they understand that every day is not going to feel the same in their body, and they're going to feel different, and that's totally normal and it's totally okay. And like, could you imagine how different life would be for us if we understood that?
I am.
Like,
I'm sitting over here just like,
it'd be amazing.
I'm imagining so many things. I'm thinking of it makes me super emotional to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me emotional. I think that I just think about back in the day when I was in school and it was like grade 7 or 8 and it was like, you get a period, done.
Yeah.
Don't have sex, done.
Yeah. And we're walking through the hallway and we hide our tampons or we hide our pads. Like I honestly, I'm going to share too much information here.
No,
but
you
I
won't.
remember going to high school and I would put my pad on in the morning in my underwear and I'd put 2 or 3 layers of toilet paper on top of it. So that when I went to the bathroom, I could just take off a layer of toilet paper and I didn't have to carry a pad with me.
Right.
And I could just, throughout the day, I'll just take off another layer of toilet paper, another layer of toilet paper, so that I didn't have to worry about, you know, hiding a pad somewhere to go to the bathroom.
Yep.
Right. And like, it's just not how we should be living. And in all honesty, boys need this information too.
Yes, they do.
We need to be sharing this information with boys. They need to understand how women flow throughout the month.
Yeah.
Right. So that again, we're not embarrassed. I mean, our TV commercials won't even show blood on a tampon or pad commercial. It's blue liquid.
I know.
Like, our society just needs to shift completely to accept the fact that women bleed every month. It's a superpower. We bleed for anywhere from like 3 to 7 days every single month, and we don't die.
A
man can't bleed for 5 days straight like that.
No.
Like, we bleed for 5 days and we're still here to talk about it.
Yeah.
That's powerful. That blood creates life.
Right.
And,
right.
You know,
that's
like,
the thing.
Without it, we're not here.
Yeah.
And so we need to make this conversation the norm with boys and girls. We need to make this conversation the norm around our dinner tables. My son is 12. Day 1, when I start bleeding, I'm like, dude, it's my period. It's day 1. I'm feeling a little tired. I'm going to need a little extra space. He knows that.
And so much permission to not take it personally. Like that, when it comes up in terms of relationships, like the ability to not take it personally for both involved. It's like, I think that's where I was getting caught up in my mind, was imagining so many things around where would we be if, and I guess we are going there because our world is shifting so quickly. But where would we be if we women were taught about the power of our body and how sacred it is, instead of the other S word, which is covered with shame and secrecy and just complete embarrassment about something that is absolutely so natural and so powerful, and no one would be here if that didn't happen. And I remember, again, being so completely mind fucked around why Why
Yeah.
aren't we talking about it? And why do I need to feel so ashamed for getting it? And I can't talk about my feelings. It was like everything that my body knew to do, I wasn't doing because of how the conditioning was. And I
Yeah.
remember getting my period. It was on Mother's Day, and it was like the most incredible thing. And then from that moment on, it was like, she's got her period, leave her alone. Like that was the the intention. And I get it, because if you don't understand the hormones, what's happening, like it's just this outward of
Yeah.
anger quite a bit of time,
Yeah.
and I've been reflecting a lot about this, and I think about my dad, and he would know before I did. And I find that absolutely fascinating. Now it's like, he would be like, yeah, it's that time, man. I'm like, fuck, no, it's not. And then, yeah, it was. I was like, how does he know? But there's so much energetically going on that, like, at the time, just not in tune with myself. And then I was 15 and I had a massive cyst on my ovary. It grew to the point where it was so big, it caused incredible amount of pain. And we went to the ER, and they discovered that my fallopian tube was wrapped around my ovary because the
Mm.
cyst was so big. And so, within few hours, I was in surgery, not really understanding like what was going to happen. I just knew I was in a lot of pain. And they had said, we went in and we, your fallopian tube was wrapped around it, and we were going to remove that whole like side. But when we, untwisted your tube, it went back to normal color. Like everything went back to healthy. And
Wow.
I didn't understand, I was like, but I
Yeah.
don't understand. I just know that I have a period. I didn't
Yeah.
understand all of the beautiful things that can come from ovaries and fallopian tubes and having a baby. It was just one of those. And then it was, you need to heal and you're going to go on birth control so it never happens again. And
Right.
then, getting off birth control and going on a 7-year journey of, oh, like you actually have PCOS, and advocating and fighting for the fact that like I do, but they're like, no, you don't have any of the symptoms. You don't have any of the symptoms. I'm like, I have all the symptoms. No, you don't have any of the symptoms. I have all the symptoms. I have all of
Yeah.
them. And so I can really connect with, going in, and I didn't have a name for it, but I was definitely tracking my cycle and my fertility, and really healing the body through supplements and food in order to prepare for having a child. Because I think at 15 I was like, nope, it's not in the cards for me. Don't even
Right.
attempt it. So I just literally shut that part of my body off. And then, you engage in relationships that are probably not healthy, and there's a lot of things that can happen, and I just shut it off. I just done.
Yeah.
And it's just an interesting concept that if we were to go back, and if I was 11 years old and I learned about the power of my body and learned how in sync I could be with myself and tune into that and express what I need, what the difference would be. So I think your work is
Yeah.
incredible and so powerful and so needed. And I'm so grateful.
Yeah. It's work that fills me up.
Yeah.
And, the idea of celebrating a young girl's first period, and teaching them about it, it's not new. It
Mm-mm.
happened 2,000 years ago. Young
Mhm.
girls were celebrated when they got their period. Women gathered monthly. They bled together in the red tent.
Yeah. I was going to bring
And
that up.
you know and during that red tent time, in some communities, the men outside the red tent would make no community decisions until the women finished in the red tent, because they knew that when women were menstruating, they had this deep connection to their intuition and their inner knowing, and they didn't want to make any decisions without first checking with the women,
Wow.
because they may have had some insights while they were gathered in the red tent all bleeding together.
Wow.
Right? But it's not the way of our world anymore, because of that, P word, the patriarchy.
I was going to say.
And
Yeah.
and everything shifted after that. And our bleed time was made to be this thing that we should be ashamed of, that was dirty,
Mhm.
um, that we just should tuck away, not talk about. And that's what we're coming out of that now,
Yeah.
because so many educators, so many women are doing this work, are talking about it, are making it the norm. And the more
Mhm.
we do that, the better off we're all going to be as women
I
and
agree.
mothers.
I agree. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I agree. And that would be, so yeah, so taking your work from beginning with young women and then transcending into working with women, and you know, I'm assuming some moms, some not, but how has that shifted in terms of how have you seen that transform the relationship with motherhood and parenting and just, you know, all the things that come with motherhood?
I
It's a big
think,
question.
yeah, it is. I think it really comes down to the fact that um, it allows mothers to say to themselves, I'm doing okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And allows them the space to say, I'm doing enough
Mm-hmm.
right now with where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically when they're in the autumn and winter phase, because that's when we try and do way too much instead of stepping back.
Mm.
And it allows women to say, and moms to say, no, I need to step back right now. I need to say no.
No. Yes.
It's okay for me to say no right now so that
Yeah.
I can take care of me. And I will say yes again when I'm in my spring and summer phase.
Mm.
I like to call it the sacred no.
Mm.
And the more we use that in the different phases of our cycle, the more permission, the more we can allow ourselves to rest, to nourish, to nurture, and to take care of ourselves, so that when we are doing all of the things that we do, we show up as our best self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. And I think like now more than ever, just this whole resting element, finding ways in how we do that because our world has turned over. And I think it's made it extremely difficult in a world where we were just starting to make some space for ourselves because we had the village or the community of support. It's moved into really like all of that opportunity of resting has been even more difficult to implement. So if you know, how would you encourage a mom now, and especially in the times that we're in, to incorporate that in their day? How can they do that? What would be one of the one steps they could do differently?
Well, it honestly depends what kind of person you are. If you're a morning person, I highly suggest using the early morning
Mm,
as your nourishing time. And I know in early motherhood that's difficult.
yeah.
I am naturally a morning person, and I remember when my little guy was a baby and a toddler, and we co-slept for a long time and doing
Mm-hmm.
all of the ninja warrior moves to try and sneak out of bed so I wouldn't wake him up, so I could maybe just have a cup of tea by myself.
Yeah.
And some mornings I managed that cup of tea by myself, just
Mm-hmm.
sitting in silence, and that was enough to nourish me in those days. And that's all I had.
Yeah.
Um, as he got older, and now he sleeps in, and he sleeps in his own bed. And one day, moms, your kids will sleep in their own bed.
Yeah, that's what a lot of the mamas say. Yeah.
I promise you they will. Now, I get up early, and I sometimes have 2 or 3 hours to
Mm,
nourish me. I mean, I also work in the mornings while he's still sleeping, but I have that time to look after me before I start work.
mm.
If you're not a morning person, definitely stay in bed, get
Yeah.
your sleep,
Yeah.
and then see if you can't find a pocket of time throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
And it might just be 10 minutes in the afternoon. If the sun is shining, go outside, take your socks and shoes off, put your bare feet on the earth, and just stand in the sunshine.
Yeah.
Connect to the earth. The earth is powerful and provides so much amazing vibrational energy for us. Just doing that can totally revive you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a full-time mom and your kids are with you all the time, take their socks and shoes off and let them join you.
Yeah.
In early motherhood, when I was mothering and it was him and I 24/7, my daily walks were a saving grace.
Right.
And yeah, I had to bring him with me, but that's okay. I put him
Yeah.
in the carrier or put him in the stroller, and away we went. And just, being outside, being in nature, was huge for just nourishment and looking after myself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're an evening person and your kids are in bed at a decent time, then use that evening time. So many of us get to the end of the day and we're exhausted,
Yeah.
and we turn to the default, which is TV or Netflix. Challenge yourself to not turn those things on and do something for you, right? Run a bath if that's nourishing for you. Maybe it's chatting with a girlfriend. And I preface that by saying, make the chat on the phone instead of by text, so you're not on your screen, right? Have a phone conversation with that, whatever's nourishing for you. Things will nourish different women in different ways. So it's finding what is most nourishing for you, and then finding that little pocket of time to do it. And when your kids are younger, it's only going to be 5 or 10 minutes at a time. And that's all we're going to get. It's the heaviness of motherhood at that stage, but it gets easier. And as they get older, you don't even find more time just becomes available because they become more independent and they look after themselves, and they'll play by themselves a little bit longer. Then they start to read, and then they're going to read books. And, my little guy picks up a book and he's there for an hour, and I'm like, wow, where are you? But, he's in that book, he's in that story. And so that it opens up time, and things change and shift. And I speak to mothers that have kids in that young stage, and they're like, but don't you miss that young age and where they needed you all the time? And I'm like, no. Not at all. It's bittersweet to see them grow up, but it's also nice to have some freedom back. And soak in that as well. So wherever you are in whatever stage, just 5 minutes somewhere.
And setting that intention that is you nourishing. And it's like, that is enough, and that can be enough, because just tuning into what we need in that moment, I think, is such a big difference, instead of like going through the day just kind of waiting for something else to happen. It's kind of like, I describe it like, I can it's like the cause and effect. I can only have me time when and it's like, okay, but how can we incorporate through the day just some of that grounding time? And I can really connect to going outside. I think especially during the last 6 months, being outside in nature has been the most grounding thing. We did a lot of that before, but it just felt even more significant during this time. And I just really, I really agree. And I think just like knowing that is all it is. Cause I think we're all I've had lots of conversations with men and women that it has to be something so extraordinary in order to like fill the cup. And it's like, it actually is the exact opposite, and I really live by the joy in the ordinary. The ordinary moments are what we really fill our cup with joy and gratitude. And taking moments to notice that has been my cup filler for sure in these early days, because I'm really in the early days.
And it's one of my mottos is it's the little things that we do consistently every single day that make the difference.
Yes.
Right. Yep. And again, going back to that, it's not enough. I was speaking to a woman the other day, and we were talking about self-nourishment and self-care. And she was saying, I never feel like it's enough. And I worked with her to shift her mindset. And now her mindset is, I only have 5 minutes, but I'm going to use it. Instead of saying, oh, it's not enough, and scrolling on my phone, I'm actually going to take this 5 minutes and look after me in some way. Right. And it's those little things that we do. And imagine if you start doing that, if you just start with 5 minutes a day, and then all of a sudden tomorrow or a week from now, you've done your 5 minutes every day, and it's mid-morning and you're scrolling through Instagram or Facebook, and you're like, what am I doing? I could be sitting with a cup of tea, reading a inspiring passage from a book. And again, things shift. Now, all of a sudden there's another 5 minutes in your day.
You're right.
And slowly you shift and you move yourself towards more self-care and self-nourishment, because it feels so darn good.
It does. Yeah.
Right? When you give yourself those things. And again, small things consistently every single day. That's what adds up over time to you living your best life.
I agree. So my last question, not even my last question, I think it's my second last question. So we've kind of gone through the journey of, how this has showed up for your life and how you're bringing that in. Now, in terms of being your own, being in business for yourself and being that entrepreneur and leading through that, how have you been able to create space? So I've heard quite a bit of it, right? Like you have the mornings for yourself. I think what would be really cool for more of us to talk about in entrepreneurship is where we're creating the time and space in our business, and how it relates to motherhood. Like, for example, during lockdown, let's call it, it was still finding space, but it did not look like the traditional 9 to 5. And I think in entrepreneurship, we can get really wrapped up in, well, I'm not working the straight 8 hours. So, it can get really trapped in that. So now incorporating flow, incorporating tracking, incorporating the phases, how have you been able to combine all of that and make a really harmonious business and practice for yourself?
Well, I use the phases of my cycle to plan my work schedule.
Cool.
So, and it's a little tricky for me right now because I'm deep in perimenopause, which means my cycles are somewhat irregular and I'm not ovulating regularly anymore. And so it's been a little bit more challenging. For instance, I would not have planned to launch my new program on Tuesday on day 1 of my cycle.
Right.
But I ended up having a 43-day cycle, so that happens.
Yeah.
But I do my best to plan out my work based on where I am in my cycle. So I will sit down, when I'm working on a new project, when I'm working on creating posts or whatever, and I will do those things during my spring and summer phase. And I will plan the creative part of my work during that time.
Right.
And then when I move through to my autumn and winter phase, that's the reflective time. That's the tuning into my intuition. So I look back at what I've done over the past 2 weeks, what I created. Is this what I want to put out there? Is this how I want it to land with women? And then obviously my intuition will kick in during my bleed time and other things will come up. Oh, I should add this to that. And I don't do any of that. I don't add those things during my bleed time. I just keep notes. And
Right.
it's like, okay, add this to that, add this to that project. And then when I'm back in my spring and summer phase, that's when I take all those notes and I implement them back in. And things like that. Yeah. And I try my best to plan workshops and presentations during my spring and summer phase.
Right.
Again, it doesn't always happen. And some days I'm doing a workshop on day 2 or day 3 and I'm bleeding and it's not what I want to do. But again, with the intention and with the awareness and knowing myself and my body, what I can then do is say, okay, I have to get through this presentation.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. And so the day before, I give myself some extra nourishment. And then the day after, I make space.
Right.
If I had a meeting that wasn't as important the next day, then I might cancel that meeting so that I can have space to look after me because I know I'm going to be expending energy at a time when that's not what my body wants to do.
Right. Right.
So once we have that intention awareness, then we can use it in our business.
Yep. Agreed.
To support us. And it's not always going to work out.
Yeah.
But then when it doesn't work out, we know what tools we have and what we need in order to support ourselves if we have to do things that is counterintuitive to where we are in our cycle.
Yeah, it's that permission slip. I feel like it just always goes back to just the permission, acceptance, and compassion instead of beating ourselves up, being hard on ourselves, and shoulding all over the place. It's really that defining moment. And I would say in my years of practice, I definitely focused on self-love. That was, I tagged myself as a self-love coach, and that was what it always came back down to, was how are we treating ourselves in the darkest of moments, and really opening up, especially when working with women, opening up around how is the cycle, because I would notice a trend. Like if I was working with women for 6 months, I was like, okay, here we are again. We just had this incredible breakthrough. We did incredible work. We just, we cleared out that limiting belief at a cellular level, and so it was like there's these themes that will happen. And I think that's the ebb and flow of life, but having the tools to identify, move through, navigate with kindness was like my biggest thing. How you're treating yourself and showing up in that compassion. Like if your best friend showed up every month with the same thing, you would never say to her, you shouldn't be here. Like you'd be like, come on in, here's the chocolate, let's go. Right. So
exactly.
it was that,
Yeah, I think it's really important to remember too that autumn and winter phase, which is the dark time of our phase, is important in the cycle
Yes.
because seeds don't germinate without darkness,
Yep.
right? We don't grow without being in the darkness.
Yep.
And so we need that time to germinate new ideas, for new things to come to us, so that when we begin the cycle again, when we come back to that spring season, we can birth. We're always birthing as women, whether it's babies or whether it's ideas. There's
Right.
always things being birthed from us. And in order to birth, we have to be a seed in the darkness. And it's trusting in that darkness and trusting in that time, and allowing yourself to actually sit in the darkness and be okay with that.
And be okay with it and know that
Yeah.
you are totally worthy, that you are totally safe, and you are so enough. I think has been those are the game-changing moments of the darkness.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
totally. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this. I am
Oh,
so grateful.
thank you.
I
It's
would
lovely.
I know you've got something for the listeners, so can you tell us about that?
Yes, I have just a short guide on the different seasons and phases of your cycle. So
Cool.
I think it's a 4-page handout. Just talk about the different phases and the qualities and characteristics of each phase, and then a little blurb on how to chart,
Mm-hmm.
and a beautiful chart that you can print off and make copies of, and start your own charting journey.
Cool.
Um, so it's free, and if you go to my Instagram page and follow the link in my bio, it's there.
Cool.
Um,
And I'll
and I
post it
can also,
below
yeah, I'll give you
too.
the link as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So my last question I always like to end off with is, if you were to go back and tell your younger self, motherhood, what would you want her to know after, where you are today? What would you want her to know today?
Oh, wow. That you are enough just the way you are.
Yes. Oh, I have goosebumps.
Yeah.
It's so powerful to be on this side, because it's almost like there's 3 answers that all moms give on the show. And I just, every single time I get, a very similar answer, it, ah, it lights me up, because it's that message that we are enough, and that you are loved, and that we can ask for help and we can receive it. Like, those are the big messages. So
Yes.
yes, thank you for everything that you're bringing into the world. Thank you for your time. This has been an absolute honor of mine, and I would just love to have you back. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with you, and I will come back anytime. Love to.
Yay! Thanks
Yeah.
so much.